Okay, class, today we're going to be talking about chapters 8 and 9. Chapter 8 is roof and ceiling construction, and chapter 9 is roof assemblies. We'll start off with chapter 8, talking a little bit about the information that's contained there. Basically, when you think about the construction on a new residential home or a remodel type situation, whatever it might be, and you're going to be putting a roof on it, you have to consider the type of construction that you're going to be performing. Starting in chapter 8, it basically talks about two different types of systems. The one system is what we call a hand-cut rafter system with rafters and ceiling joists, and the second type of system that we would be discussing are trusses. And trusses are a pre-engineered and prefabricated, usually off-site system that's then brought to the home and then assembled by a carpenter. Let's just go back and take a look at the hand-cut roof system. When you first start looking at a hand-cut roof, typically the carpenter, the framer, will have a set of plans, and the plans will dictate the slope of the roof, which is going to be the rise over the run. Usually starting, about a 412 is normally what you see. It could be less than that, but 412 is a pretty flat roof. And typically they will go up to, say, 1212 and above. They go up higher than that. But that's kind of the range that you see. And most of the common roof systems that you see are probably going to be in the range between a 512 up to about an 812. I would say the majority of the homes that you see fall into those slope ranges. Anyway, once the carpenter looks at the plan, finds what the slope is, he can then begin to calculate the information he needs to determine so he can cut the rafters. And depending if it's a gable roof or a hip roof or whatever type of roof system it might be, the carpenter will have to determine the member size, the rafter member, what sizing it needs to be, how far it can span, whether or not he'll need to provide additional supports, and some of the different components that go into that roof system. The ridge board, the vent blocking, purlins, etc. There's many different types of ways to assemble a roof system. Anyway, the rafter is a component that can be determined, and with the code in the section that we have here, there are charts and information that help us predefine what rafters can be used and what spans and the conditions based on loading, live load, dead load, etc. This information is then useful not only for the framer or carpenter that's working on the project, but also for designers, architects, people that are doing the office type work that would be information to the actual build. The chapter 8 talks about not only rafters but also ceiling joists. Now, whenever you have a hand-cut roof, there's a couple different ways that roof can be incorporated into the structure. You can have hand-cut rafters with a ridge board and collar ties that would allow you to have a certain amount of vaulted area. You can have rafters with a ridge beam that could give you pretty much a total vaulted ceiling system. Or you can have rafters in conjunction with ceiling joists, which would give you a flat ceiling like most normal homes. And usually the ceiling joists, similar to a floor joist, are provided across the top plates of the floor line, and they're going to give you the structural members that would allow you to later on in the structure of the home to add electrical and drywall those kinds of things. But in conjunction with the rafter, the ceiling joist is an integral part. And most homes that you'll see will have these components. Jumping back to the second component that we talked about originally is the design and use of trusses. Now trusses, unlike the pre-engineered information that's in the code for rafters, are usually provided by an outside engineering source. And usually there's companies, quite possibly lumber yards in association with engineering groups, that will have engineers that can design truss configurations that meet engineering principles, and these engineers are what we call professional engineers, PEs. And typically when they design a truss system, they will stamp it with their certified stamp, and that information will have to be provided along with layout, design information when the trusses are submitted, well, when the plans are submitted, and also when they're provided for the construction, so that the building inspector can see what's actually been provided. Now trusses are engineered products that usually the engineer defines what type of a truss system is required, and the layout, and all of the components, girders, and different types of systems, whether it's a hip roof or a gable, or if you have other types of load-bearing type trusses for transfer loading, that kind of thing. The engineer will figure that out and provide that information. So here in the chapter, you'll find out a little bit about standard rafters, a little bit about trusses, and the code information that's involved in helping you to understand how these components work into the structure of the total home. As with the other assignments that you've already completed, we do have a worksheet for you again, in which there'll be questions that will require you to go into these sections. Chapter 8 is what I've been talking about mostly right now, and finding basic information that will help you to understand what the code is defining and talking about. Now Chapter 9, in conjunction with Chapter 8, is roof assemblies, which is going to refer to the exterior of the roof. So once a roof, whether it's been a hand-cut rafter roof or if it's a truss roof, typically it's going to have a sheeting put on it, and once we're to that point, then we have to put the weatherproofing on there. And there's many different types of roof systems that can be incorporated. Now here in this area, we predominantly use an asphalt type shingle, which is a tar base type product with a gravel mix and a mesh usually. And that's predominantly the system that you see here in this area. But in Chapter 9 it also talks about different roof systems. Tile roofs, metal roofs, cement roofs, wood roofs like wood shakes, cedar shakes, those kinds of products. And so in the chapter you'll find out information about some of these different products. Also you'll learn about what the underlayment requirements will be, different types of underlayment that are approved. Now, as we've talked about earlier in the course, some of the information that we find in the code is written by code people that have worked on these things for years and years. But much of the materials that we use also have industry standards. Chapter 9, you'll find that much of the roofing materials that are being used have industry standards, like ASTM or ANSI and SI, or some of the other different regulating bodies that help determine materials specifications and use and conditional requirements for different products. So anyway, Chapter 9 is going to discuss these things. It's going to talk about different types of fasteners and requirements for fasteners. It's going to talk a little bit about flashing, where we need flashing, requirements of flashing, how flashing deflects potential weather conditions away from the home, from walls or roof parts of the structure, so that there's no moisture coming in. Anyway, as you go through these two chapters, you'll find that there's information that hopefully is building upon what you've already been learning. This course is pretty much designed to help you in the building construction technology program, and is there to kind of put together the components as the department would have, so that you can see what's required for the basic building of a residential structure. So anyway, keep working hard on your assignments. Appreciate all that you're doing, and I'll put together another video clip for next week, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you.